Hello YouTube. If you have been watching this prediction series so far, you will have noticed I have been covering shorter durations of time. However, in the next few parts of this series, I'm going to predict what's going to happen further down the timeline. That way in the future, I can look back on those videos and laugh at how wrong I was. Have you wondered how our world is going to change over the next few years? And what it might look like on January 1st, 2030. In this video, I'm going to give you my somewhat realistic, data-driven predictions for what the end of the decade could look like. Not apocalyptic, not utopian, just grounded in current trends and where they seem to be heading. Basically, I want to think about how the world is going to evolve in 2027, 2028, and 2029. Let's start with sports. If you're not interested in sports, then skip to the time on the screen. By 2030, technology will be fully embedded into professional sports across all of the major leagues. In Major League Baseball, automated strike zones will likely be standard across the league, not just purely challenge-based systems, meaning that the automatic strike zone technology will be used on every play throughout all 9 innings, not just when a player asks for a challenge. The transition period of hybrid human-AI officiating will be over. Pitch framing will be a relic of the past, and analytics departments will have recalibrated pitching strategies entirely around precise strike zone geometry. Game times will be faster. Umpire controversy will be significantly reduced, though not eliminated. And I don't think the MLB is going to be the only league that's going to implement more technology to ensure more accurate and precise calls during the games. It's going to be every league. In the NBA, international players will likely make up a historically high percentage of all NBA teams, reflecting the NBA's investment into global talent pipelines. Load management debates will fade as biometric monitoring becomes normalized. Teams will rely on real-time physiological data to determine playing time. In the world of college sports, you may have heard about the recent controversy surrounding Kansas player Darren Peterson because he has frequent early exits out of games, especially earlier on in the season. So now in the future, I believe data will be more readily available to the coaches to determine whether those early exits are an actual result of a physiological issue or if it's more of an issue with the commitment to the game. But at the same time, I wonder how players will feel about sharing that much data with NBA and or team officials. And this isn't just going to be the NBA, it's going to be every pro and semi-pro team in the world. In the NFL, Kansas City and Buffalo fans will be saying goodbye to 2 iconic stadiums. 2029 or 2030 is expected to be the last year where Arrowhead Stadium will host a Kansas City Chiefs game. So I bet there'll be a lot of emotions surrounding the final few games in the final years of the 2020s, as both teams say hello to brand new state-of-the-art stadiums that will hopefully offer an improved experience for fans and players alike, young and old, despite the feelings of loss of tradition with having to move stadiums. College athletics will look radically different by 2030. NIL deals will be structured more like formal employment contracts. Major conferences may effectively operate as semi-professional leagues. In basketball, the Big 12 has become the first league to debut an LED glass floor. It will be showcased during this year's conference tournament. There has been much excitement about it, but there has been some criticism, with some folks concerned about how distracting the court may be to viewers and players. However, I think this court is going to catch on. Other conferences will do test runs initially like the Big 12. Then all neutral site games will showcase it. Then finally we will see the bigger schools revamp their courts with this new technology. Here is a chart of the various leagues and who I'm going to bet are going to be the champions for that given year. Pause if you'd like to fully examine it. By 2030, we will likely be living in a more multipolar world, geopolitically at least. In terms of the economy, even though the US is currently pursuing a more aggressive protectionist policy, I believe the world is still heading towards deeper globalization and integration. American protectionism won't weaken and divide countries. It will make them collaborate amongst themselves even more and then establish new alliances. The United States will remain a dominant power, but China, India, and regional blocs will have significantly more leverage in global decision-making. These regional blocs will try to project more of their own influence within their surrounding regions and globally. This power projection will cover multiple areas of influence, including military, economics, and culture. The 19th century was the century of the British Empire. The 20th century was the American century, and I believe the 21st century will be the Asian century. We have already started seeing this trend emerge with the rise of countries like China, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and several Southeast Asian countries. While everyone has their eyes on China, I think India is going to emerge as the dominant global power. I think democracy, lower expenses, and demographic advantage will position the country to make many surprises in the next couple years. Indonesia is another country to pay attention to as well. I think the war in Ukraine will be resolved by the end of the decade. Although Russia always likes to boast about how they approach everything from a position of strength, I think Russia is now weaker now than at any point during the war. Their economy is suffering with no positive expectations for the future, just more suffering. The country is only getting more divided internally. Young men that will build and contribute to the country are now dead, fled, or are disabled. Finally, Russia is becoming more isolated internationally. They are losing traditional allies like Venezuela, Iran, and presumably Cuba. I think they will still keep Crimea and some territory in Ukraine. However, the front line will become stagnant and frozen as both sides invest more in robotic warfare and pull more humans from the front lines. Robotic and drone warfare will have permanently altered military doctrine worldwide. There are reports the U.S. has asked Ukraine how to cheaply and effectively shoot down Iranian Shahed drones. I predict Ukraine and Russia will sign a peace treaty on the war's 7th year anniversary on February 24th, 2029. Ukraine will be permitted to join NATO and the EU, keep the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and have no military restrictions. Russia will get to keep Crimea and the Donbass region and get some sanctions lifted. Putin will get no time to rest as he will have to stamp down unrest within Russia. Countries will be bolstering defenses around air bases to prevent a Ukraine-style copycat drone attack on their own territory. Armies will be integrating sea, air, and land-based drone systems into their arsenals. The transportation on military supplies will be done by autonomous vehicles. AI will increasingly be in charge of making non-lethal military decisions. Autonomous systems will be a normal part of modern armed forces. The countries that mastered AI-assisted logistics and manufacturing in the late 2020s will hold strategic advantages over those who don't. Iran will continue struggling with climate stress, particularly water scarcity. This will continue to erode what little trust among the population has for the government. I think the Islamic Republic will get replaced with a more Western-friendly, secular, left-wing government. Perhaps the former crown prince will be involved in the new government's affairs. Anyway, it will be someone who will allow Western oil interests to invest in the country and export its energy products to the West. In some ways, I think it will mean a better life for most Iranians. However, I think it will be a life similar to that of Iraq. In many other ways, it won't be a better life. However, even during the writing of this script and the making of this video, so much has changed by the given hour in the last 2 weeks in Iran. Some predictions may even become outdated by the video's publishing date. I think Iran will become another Iraq, like I said earlier. The country is similar in that Iran is very ethnically, politically, and religiously diverse. Way more of these three things than most people think. The country will become a mishmash of different groups engaging in different levels of violence, all held together by a central government powerful enough to enforce its authority, but not strong enough to defy Western interests. Cuba will likely undergo gradual economic restructuring rather than sudden collapse. Slow reform, not revolution. It is hard seeing the communist government survive with important allies like Venezuela and Iran facing existential crises of their own. The country will try to engage in reapproachment with the US to revive its economy. Like with the situation with Iran, the daily news coming out of the island is hard to keep up with. Cuba will be one of the few countries to be better off in 2030 than it was in 2020, though, I think. Because although I think in the short term, the transition will be painful, in the long term, the reforms that Cuba will undergo will be necessary, and they will bear fruit for the island. Europe will see a rise in nationalist and extremist parties at the end of the 2020s, much like the rise of the far right in Italy and Japan. The rise of the AfD in Germany during its next election will make headlines, but the party won't make drastic measures to please its voters like many may have feared. They will elect someone similar to Italy's current Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Someone who may create flashy headlines but won't tip the boat over when it comes to foreign and domestic affairs. The decline in the value of the pound will confound policymakers in the next few years in the UK. After years of giving right and left-wing governments a chance just to be given incompetence, the British people will turn to more radical parties. The far-right Reform Party as well as nationalist parties belonging to each of the constituent member countries are gaining in popularity, as evidenced by recent election victories and polling. We may not see a breakup of the UK by 2030, but we will see a much more divided country plagued with a declining living standard. Northern Ireland will see a return of ethnic and religious strife, the rise of the SNP in Scotland, Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, and Plaid Cymru in Wales will be interesting to watch. Any future Prime Minister may have to make a deal with these parties in order to obtain power in London. Although the right has enjoyed recent victories in elections across Latin America, these parties will see a drop in popularity as inflation from the Iran war will create economic crisis for these governments. The various countries in Africa will have to decide which regional bloc abroad they want to trade and collaborate with. Europe, the Middle East, the US, or China. Each region comes with its own benefits, but they also come with potential issues. Africa and Europe don't have the best history, and the US and China are sure to make deals that are in their benefit. Military, financial, etc. And the Middle East currently has got its hands full at the moment with the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Although I think the continent for the most part will choose cooperation with China. The Hormuz crisis will create an energy and food crisis for many countries. Islamic militant groups will grow in power and create mischief in West Africa, more than they already have. Enough of a crisis where foreign powers may have to consider military intervention. Ethiopia will once again be able to let its citizens wet their feet in the waters of the Red Sea. However, this will only be after a painful war with its neighbor Eritrea and much isolation from the international community, who has condemned land grabs by other countries. Environmental instability will become as geopolitically significant as ideology. Water wars will increase in regions stressed by water scarcity. These may include the Middle East and the Indian subcontinent, as well as parts of Africa. Will there be any new countries by 2030? Most likely. Bougainville in the Pacific is expected to gain independence from Papua New Guinea in 2027. This is dependent, though, on cooperation from the PNG federal government. Palestine will probably see more global recognition as a sovereign country. Greenland also has ambitions for independence. This would be remarkable in several aspects because it would lie between several global powers. It would be the largest independent island on Earth. It would be the only country in the Western Hemisphere with an indigenous language as its main language. However, it is going to probably wait until after Trump and his party leave the White House before pursuing any independence goals. In 2029, expect whoever is in charge in Nuuk to pursue either a referendum or a deal with Copenhagen. There will be questions surrounding potential U.S. interference on the island, so expect real action on independence to occur sometime in the early 2030s. Less likely, but that I should mention, are several breakaway regions in Asia and East Africa. Myanmar and Ethiopia remain in ethnic conflict and plagued with internal strife. If things deteriorate to a significant degree for the central governments in those countries, we may see a situation similar to what happened in Yugoslavia in the 1990s. A violent and bloody breakup of those two countries into various ethno-states. The last mention on this list is Kurdistan. There is currently rumors that Kurds in Iraq are massing large numbers of fighters to launch an incursion into Iran, taking advantage of the Iranian government's war with the US, Israel, and their Middle East partners. As of mid-March, they haven't acted on this rumor. However, I guess it wouldn't be too far out of the imagination for the various Kurdish groups located in Syria, Iraq, and Iran could take advantage of all the simultaneous chaos in all three countries to carve out a Kurdish ethno-state in the middle of the region. With plenty of support from the US and an understanding with Turkey that the Kurds in that country have no hope for independence and they should just keep their distance. Even if there is no Kurdish state, I predict Kurdish-led violence will increase in the late 2020s. Most economists project moderate but uneven global growth through the late 2020s. I believe how quickly a country adopts AI technology and its proximity to geopolitical threats will affect how the state of its economy will be. I'm a little skeptical on the whole moderate growth thing. Because of the Hormuz crisis in the Middle East currently, I think that economic growth will be low to negative. In other words, no growth at all. Across much of the first world, AI will have permanently restructured white-collar entry-level work. If you're entering the workforce, you better know how to work with AI systems in order to even be considered. New job categories will exist and begin to be cemented into the workforce. These may include AI oversight, prompt architecture, automation auditing, and robotics maintenance. Countries and regions will begin implementing different approaches to tackling some of the issues with AI. I think there is going to be a rise in Luddite immigration. People, primarily older individuals who won't be able to adapt to the future economy, will move to less developed countries that may be more slow at adopting AI technology. The labor market won't collapse, but it will be more polarized. Those with experience, connections, and willing to make the sacrifices will be given priority. Everyone else will be fighting over scraps. Highly adaptable workers will benefit. Routine task workers will face constant reskilling pressure. If you have autism, I'm sorry. Universal basic income will still be debated. Those with experience, connections, and willing to take a pay cut will be given priority. Everyone else will be fighting over scraps. Highly adaptable workers will be benefiting from this. Routine task workers will face constant reskilling pressure. If you have autism, I'm sorry. Universal basic income will be debated, but expanded wage subsidies, tax credits, or conditional income support programs may become politically viable in some countries. Energy demand will surge due to AI data centers. Countries will be forced to answer the question how they plan to upgrade their electrical grids to accommodate the rise in data centers. This will accelerate nuclear investment, grid modernization, and battery storage expansion. However, consumers of energy will be in for a bumpy ride during that transition. By 2030, AI will not replace everyone, but it will be embedded in nearly every workflow. Software engineering won't disappear, but solo developers equipped with AI co-pilots will outperform entire 2020 era teams. I believe by January 2029, one of these AI companies will achieve Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI. The new administration that takes charge January 20th will have to quickly decide how it wants to regulate and collaborate with AI. In the next 4 years, I think we will see big changes to education as a result of three things: AI, tighter budgets, and politics. School administrators from the university president down to the teacher will be finding ways to incorporate AI into their education system. As much as people complain about salaries and how there isn't enough teachers for the overcrowded classrooms, I wonder how much they will complain and respond when the schools just start using AI to handle tasks instead of a teacher. Parents may demand transparency from their local schools and teachers on how much they use AI. What types of data on the parents' children are teachers inputting into corporate AI programs, and what tasks are being done by AI? AI tutors will be normal in education. Instead of being instructed in not using AI for fear of cheating, students will be taught AI in order to use in future assignments and how to collaborate with AI. Colleges will restructure around collaboration with AI as well, rather than resistance to it. Institutions will invest in programs that people believe won't be replaced by automation. In order to cut costs and become more of an attractive option for teachers, schools will switch to a 4-day work week nationally. Snow days will be a thing of the past. Hybrid learning will be introduced much more in high school. Certain days will be virtual days, or your child will be required to take a semester online. Lower-level white-collar tasks will be replaced. However, I think middle management and any management that doesn't share a close relationship with the C-suite folks are going to face a career reckoning as well. Most companies will operate hybrid human-AI management systems. Humanoid robots won't be everywhere, but warehouses, manufacturing plants, and some retail environments will use them regularly to some degree. 2026 will see more announcements from companies about layoffs. Perhaps during team meetings, you may hear about a corporate restructuring or how they plan to bring in a renovation crew in the next several months to help prep the facility to be more competitive and dynamic for the future, and how this may affect your employment status in the coming months. Robotics will affect hiring decisions and logistics in large retail chains. If you expect the current job market situation to improve, I have some bad news. The physical robotics will be taking over the workplace, while AI will determine which lucky humans get to possess the few jobs that are left. Anyway, humans, through economic policy, seem to be getting the job loss snowball rolling this February, seeing nearly 92,000 jobs lost in that month alone. Self-driving vehicles will become a bigger presence as the 2020s drag on. Personal autonomous vehicles are still projected to be decades away, so I want to focus on those. However, several companies are working on vehicles that drive more predictable routes, like taxis and semi-trucks. By the end of 2026, 20 cities will see self-driving cars operate within their borders. At the end of the month of January of 2025, Waymo was operating just over 3,000 autonomous vehicles, according to filings with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. By election year 2028, I think there will be a presence of these autonomous vehicles in all 50 states. One of these companies will probably select a location near the state's premier university to collaborate with their students or engineers and move out to the rest of the regional area and state from there. Autonomous rideshare vehicles will be one of many topics discussed during political debates, as citizens will be concerned about safety and the replacement of taxi and Uber drivers. Governments will need to review the state of their infrastructure. Road maintenance will be more than paving and grading. You will need engineers to work mile by mile to install the necessary components and infrastructure to make autonomous driving possible. By 2030, autonomous taxi networks will operate in most major metropolitan areas. I'm going to guess around America's 75 largest cities. Privately owned self-driving vehicles will still exist, but fleet-based subscription mobility will grow rapidly. As of October 2025, more than 400 self-driving trucks operate in the U.S., with more than 1,000 globally, with China being the biggest competitor. 24 U.S. states permit these self-driving semi-trucks to operate. In the next few years, I think the majority of U.S. states will allow these trucks to operate within their borders, and the U.S. itself will have 1,000 trucks. By 2032, the industry is expected to be worth $76 billion. Drone delivery will be normalized for food, pharmacy, and small parcel shipments in dense urban areas. Ground-based delivery bots will be common on sidewalks in major cities. In places like New York, these delivery bots will be snaking their way through throngs of pedestrians. NASA's Artemis missions will have returned astronauts near or onto the moon again by 2030, depending on delays. The U.S. is eager to return to the moon for domestic and international purposes. The head of NASA recently announced that they want to increase the cadence of Artemis launches, complaining about the long wait times between launches. They will have to get things right with Artemis 2 though. That mission is scheduled to launch no earlier than April 1st. It will be an exciting moment though when humans make their return to our celestial neighbor. China will have expanded its lunar options and ambitions. The government has publicly stated that it intends to put its citizens on the lunar surface by the early 2030s. I expect the Chinese will be conducting missions in anticipation and preparation for that moment. What will the Chinese strategy entail to make this possible? Commercial space launches will be more routine, with smaller nations entering the space economy through partnerships rather than independent launches. However, there are going to be some countries that are going to try to get an ambitious start to their space programs as well. I think renewable energy is going to continue to grow in popularity, not because of how good it is for the environment, but for some of the other advantages that are becoming apparent. First, oil is limited by the fact that it is a finite resource and that it can only be pumped out of the ground and refined so fast, while renewables are infinite and construction of those materials can be scaled up. Second is it is becoming another alternative to becoming energy independent. You don't have to worry about how much oil you need to import or produce if you don't need it in the first place. The cost of renewable energy is insulated against global geopolitical shocks. Cuba, the Middle East, and while the rest of the world are learning that lesson the hard way in the first few months of 2026. The current crisis in the Strait of Hormuz is going to force countries to rethink how their country produces energy. I'm sorry, but I think the US military operations in Iran will be at a minimum 1 year, while the Strait of Hormuz itself will be shut down for a minimum of 60 days. I think renewables are going to be more popular than ever in 2030 because of the geopolitical events like the situation regarding the Strait of Hormuz. We will see the first country ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles by 2030. I suspect that it will either be a small European country like Norway or an island country where most of the residents don't drive far anyway. Countries won't be switching to renewables because of the environmental benefits. They will make the switch because it is a national security issue. By the start of 2030, we will have had the midterms and the presidential election in 2028. In my previous video, I stated that I think the Democratic Party is going to see major success in the 2026 midterms. And I think the US is going to veer sharply to the left in 2028 as well. Despite fears of Republican attempts to subvert the election, I think any attempt to do that will fail, as the people that need to convince the vote counters to go along with their scheme simply won't have the popularity or the political capital to go forth with their plans. Progressive policies not considered for most of the decade will find more discussion on the national stage in 2029 as America confronts the rise of AI, robotics, and automation in the workplace and society. Politics will be shaped by three forces: AI regulation, climate adaptation, and economic inequality. AI will become a central voting issue, not because people fear it abstractly, but because of job displacement and misinformation. Deepfakes and AI-generated media will force election systems to adopt authentication standards. We have already seen AI-generated content be used by both sides here in the US. If in the next few years we will see the first major crisis created by misinformation that was peddled by a AI deepfake post. Climate migration will influence domestic policy debates in multiple countries. How the government manages natural disasters is going to be a more than just an argument that politicians have when crafting the budget. It will become one of the main issues as funds dry up due to mismanagement, increased frequency of disasters, and insurance companies raising rates for homeowners. The political direction a country takes heading into the 2030s will be determined by how much their country has already adopted AI and the philosophy it chooses to implement as it traverses a world adopting the technology. The political divide may shift generationally rather than strictly along party lines. Younger voters, shaped by automation and climate instability, will prioritize economic resilience and technological oversight. By 2030, relationship trends from the 2020s will intensify. Marriage rates may continue declining. Birth rates in developed countries will likely remain below replacement level. Digital companionship tools and AI-assisted matchmaking will be normalized. In the past, financial challenges brought people together into relationships. In the future, financial constraints will be what tear relationships apart. Whether it is the student loans, medical debt, or the daily cost of living, it will be too much for most people to cope. There will be two major cultural currents, one embracing hyperconnectivity and technological integration, the other prioritizing minimalism, offline living, and intentional community building. Fashion will continue shifting towards resale, thrifting, and sustainability over traditional brand loyalty. Gender politics will remain highly visible in public discourse, but may soften in tone as younger generations normalize fluid identity concepts. Climate data trends suggest that 2030 will be among the hottest years on record globally. Heat waves in the American Southwest will intensify with record-breaking temperatures, and warm weather will last longer and start earlier. Water scarcity will push regional governments towards desalination, aggressive conservation, and interstate water negotiations. Lack of water will be an issue that everyone will have to worry about, not just certain industries like in 2026, where average folk can still go about their lives and not have to worry about the state of water. If you thought food prices in the Southwest were bad in 2026, wait until farms in the Southwest had to shut down because of conservation efforts. There will be no more reliable local sources, and retailers will have to import from areas further away, driving up costs for consumers. Stories about how hurricane seasons in the Atlantic may continue, showing higher intensity storms being commonplace. Energy infrastructure will be tested more frequently by extreme weather events. By 2030, I think every region in the country will see some form of energy crisis caused by the climate in that region. The major shift won't be in denial versus belief anymore. It will be adaptation versus cost. 2030 won't look like science fiction. It will look like 2026, but faster, hotter, more automated, and more interconnected. The biggest change won't be one dramatic event. It will be the normalization of systems that feel experimental today. AI in the workplace, autonomous vehicles in cities, climate adaptation in budgets, automation in everyday life. The future rarely arrives all at once. It arrives gradually until one day you look around and realize the world operates differently. Those are my predictions for 2030. I'm making 2 different videos on my future prediction videos because I think 2030 is going to be a different world compared to 2040. This video only covers a transitional phase that will last a few years, while my 2040 video is going to cover a society and world that has radically changed. What do you think I got right? What do you think I'm completely wrong about? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.